Yes, in this video, I'm going to teach you all about how to manage your Airbnb business and start it remotely, just in case you don't want to do it in your hometown because you don't want people to know who you are, because you're Batman. All right, Bruce, I've got your back. We're going to take you to places like Winter Park, Colorado, or we're going to take you to other cities like St. Louis, Missouri, where there are less theaters and less penguins. While all the other jokers on the internet are trying to get you to buy a course to learn how to Airbnb, I'm going to teach you in this video for free. So please like the video, subscribe for more, because this YouTube channel teaches you everything: how to find properties, how to do your research on them, how to pick them up, how to talk to landlords, how to furnish them, how to photograph them, how to do cleaning, how to hire people, how to do customer service, how to handle the money, how to grow and scale, how to be different. All this stuff is covered right here. We've covered it all on this YouTube channel. There's no better place to learn how to Airbnb. So welcome to the club. But remember, you have to subscribe and hit that bell. So let's jump in. Because I love you all and care about you all, I need to try to convince you to Airbnb in your hometown first. There's a lot of reasons why. So this first section is going to be the pros and cons of being a local. And then of course after that we'll go into how you can do this remotely if your heart is set on it. So I tell people to start in their backyards, and there's a lot of reasons why. First off, I really hope that a lot of you are in bigger cities because it really helps for context here. But I'm going to use Dallas for an example. I'm in a property right now that can see the American Airlines Center. That's our convention center, much like the George R. Brown Center in Houston, where the Stars and the Mavs play. There's live concerts and events, and there's business things. Now, in my high-rise, there are 2 floors. The Guild actually has 2 floors of this building, and they run their Airbnb business out of the same place that I have my penthouse. And so I get to see kind of like their whole thing. I'm spying on them. It's really fun. But it's an obvious choice because of the American Airlines Center that they chose to do their Airbnb business here. But locals know a lot of other areas that are not so obvious. For example, if you went up a little bit north of here, the Cedar Springs and Oak Lawn intersection by Turtle Creek has a lot of advantages because it's near an alternative community, some great restaurants, the KD Trail, but it's also near our medical center. And then if you took Oak Lawn to Maple and took Maple down, you'd be like right next to UT Southwestern and also really close to Love Field, and there's a bunch of stuff there as a reason to do some Airbnb properties. Now on the other side of town, you've got Deep Ellum, but in between Deep Ellum and Lower Greenville is a spot where you can pick up apartments and houses, and that gets you really close to both Lower Greenville, Deep Ellum, but also near the highway 75, so you can go up to SMU, Richardson, or go down into downtown. Now you might, as a stranger to Dallas, go, oh yeah, Deep Ellum's a great spot. I heard it's a great spot. Let's pick up some property there. But if you don't know why people travel to Deep Ellum or what else is there, you might not pick the exact right location. You might not prospect for the right properties. You might pick the wrong size property too, or you might pay too much in rent for that local area because you just don't know your stuff. And this leads to cascading issues. So a local will know where and why people do what. And that helps them with their market research because they have more context. See, if you don't know how to Airbnb yet, then you may not get the full context of what you're looking for when you do your market research, what you're looking for when you do your competitor research, where a local will go, I don't know anything about Airbnb, but I know this place is hella popular right now, right? And I know that I see the people that are there, so it's very real to them. Now, argument against this. Going remote, it's still possible. If you were going to Airbnb, like in a place like Dallas, you could do competitor analysis or market research, which I teach on this YouTube channel, and you can just literally copy people, right? You can go find listings that are making money because you can find the ones that are, and then ask yourself, what are they doing right? Where are they? What size listings? What's their decor style? And what do their reviews say? And you can literally just copy people. So you'll know that it works. You won't know why yet, but you will just simply know that it works, and that's going to make you some money. There's some clear advantage there. So there are still ways to do this remote. Now, another advantage of being local is you can better service guests. For example, by being a local mogul, you'll know where all the little hot spots are, right? Where all the best restaurants are, where the cool shows are, what cool little neighborhoods you should go to. And not being a local, it'll take you time to learn that stuff. So you're at a competitive disadvantage from the local mogul. And this is something that you can have against the bigger players. Like if I push into, actually we're pushing into some new cities, and I'll tell you about that later. When I push into your neighborhood, you still have an advantage because you know all about the neighborhood. My company doesn't know jack about most of the cities in this country, but we'll learn it eventually, but that's where you have your advantage, is you know more, so you can be a better mogul. You can still find this stuff on people's Airbnb listings because there's something called a guest book, and some hosts actually fill out a guest book. And so you can see what people are listing in their guest books as their local stuff that they think that local guests should do when they're in town. You can also find all the things to do in Dallas. There's a bunch of free magazines that constantly have events calendars and social calendars, and you can learn remotely. This stuff just takes time to do research. You're going to put in about 3 times more work doing research on a city remotely than you would do on a city city locally, but you still can pull it off. And the other benefit of being local is you can respond to a guest's needs more cost effectively and faster. See, if you're around and you have 2 or 3 Airbnb properties, it's your business. You will get up and move any time of the day to make sure the business is successful. And when you're new, you will make mistakes. Hands down, you absolutely will make some mistakes when you're new. So the inevitable mistake occurs, and you can either fix it yourself and do a good job fixing it, or you pay someone to fix it if they're available, right? And that's one of the other points. So I'm going to teach you how to handle that remotely as well, because you're learning when you're Airbnb-ing, and mistakes will happen. Sorry, but it'll happen. Like, you'll either forget that the body wash was low, or the housekeeper didn't tell you, stuff like that, or you need to bring them more towels, or the housekeeper just didn't show up to clean. There's all sorts of things that will go wrong, and we're going to talk about all those things and how to manage remotely next. But that probably is like the one main thing that I think is the reason why you should always start locally. Learn the context of what can go wrong, when it goes wrong, and how to fix it, so that way you can plan remotely to fix those things. So host a little bit locally, or shadow a host locally to learn what goes wrong, and then you'll be better prepared to operate remotely. So in a way, you do kind of need to be a superhero, because you'll either need to never make any mistakes, or you're going to need to have cash on hand to fund your mistakes, because mistakes cost money when you do this remotely. So without further ado, now here's my tips for you to get started remotely. Oh, and peas and carrots, remember to like this video and share it with your friends. The share and the like and some comments really help the video perform. I love you guys. Thanks. Hosting remotely, like I just said, you need to do your homework. Market research, competitor research. You're doing about 300% more work on the front end for research. You need to find where to go, why to go, what the travel patterns are for this remote area that you're romancing to start up in. You need to go and find out what people are making, what their weekend prices are. Do they have minimum night stays? How many studios are there? How many 4-bedrooms are there? How much money do the both of those make? Then make a decision. Do I want to do apartments? Do I want to do houses? Kind of thing. You need to decide on your strategy before you jump in. You need to have a well thought out plan. And a lot of times having a well thought out plan comes from having experience. Because then you can go, okay, I need to think about these things, where you're not even considering them now. If you watch this YouTube channel, I talk about all the most nuanced little things. They might seem stupid bird's eye view, but these nuances matter when you build remotes. Just do a lot of studying, have a higher than normal academic understanding of short-term rentals, and then when you go remote, you'll be able to plan for these things. You're doing more research on why people go, where they go, what's cool in the city, how much your competitors are making, what strategies they're applying to make their money, what neighborhoods have clusters of hotels, what neighborhoods have clusters of Airbnbs, and you can start to make sense of the city and document everything, because you're going to be using this data when you get started. Pro tip, I think you should go for houses first when you go remotely, because they make more margin. Even with arbitrage, if you rent a house, it might cost more money to get started, because it's harder to get free rent up front from a single family homeowner, which I love getting, but they still just make more money per property, like more percent margin per property, which means if you do have a mistake that hits you in the face, you'll have more money to soak that. You can soak your mistakes. This leads me to the one biggest truth of running an Airbnb business locally or remotely. Most everything will be done by your housekeeper or your housekeeping team. And let me walk you through what a day is like. Housekeeper shows up, knocks on the door, makes sure that the guest is gone so they can start cleaning. If the guest is not gone yet, they're gonna let you know that the guest hasn't checked out yet, they're checking out late. This you can then handle remotely through the inbox, by calling them, etc. And if this is called an overstay. Most of the times overstays are just irresponsible people who forget to check out on time, and they just delay you by an hour, hour and a half. Other times they intend not on leaving because they're upset about something, or they're kind of like a scammy guest, and then you can actually hit them for trespassing and call the police. Depending on your state laws and your innkeeper's rights, you can call the police and have them removed for trespassing. This is something that might happen once in a while, but something that could go wrong. The housekeeper being there is your eyes on the ground. Housekeeper gets into the property to start cleaning, and when they start cleaning, they're gonna make sure that nothing is broken, stolen, missing, anything like that. If something is damaged or missing, they'll tell you, and that way you can go invoke some service to go replace it. If a chair needs repairing, you can use a maintenance guy, handyman on Thumbtack or TaskRabbit to come in and repair stuff. But if a TV is missing, you'll need somebody else that you trust with a credit card to purchase a TV, bring it in, and then have a housekeeper or have a maintenance guy put the TV back on and sign into it with all your accounts like Netflix, Amazon Prime. I'll give you a hack for that later too. But then, of course, the cleaner's cleaning, making sure the place is good, doing the laundry, doing all the touch up, and then they secure the home. They take photos of the place to prove that it's been cleaned. They'll use an app like GroupMe. This GroupMe is the one we use for the longest time. You can make multiple threads, like chats that are here's the repair chat thread, here's the theft, and resolutions chat thread, and then here's the general conversation and proof we cleaned photos chat thread. Now, this is important because if you have, say, 10 properties you're operating remotely, you might need to flip through all the photos to find proof that something was clean if you're doing a resolution with Airbnb, or if you're trying to put in work orders with an apartment complex, you can flip through the repair chat thread and just, really quickly get to that detail. And so organizing your chats by topic really helps you at scale manage remotely. Now, we are using a more elegant app that Haley found that allows us to do more stuff like scheduling and time tracking and stuff, all built into something that's similar to GroupMe. And if we love it, I'll probably do a video on it later. But we've moved on from GroupMe now at scale. So now the place is clean. Everything else that happens can be done remotely. You can call the guest and say, "Hi, guest." And actually, that's a pro tip we're going to talk about later, is calling people. But you can do all your communication with guests before they arrive, during their stay, after their stay. All of it's pretty much remote. You just need to have somebody there to clean and somebody there to handle when things hit the fan. So let's talk about redundancies next. Since everything is so dearly reliant on a housekeeper, you should have a backup housekeeping company in case your one housekeeper gets sick or quits. And if that housekeeping company is not available, you should have a plan C, which is a co-host. And this co-host backup will serve you as your final safety net. It's an expensive one, but your final safety net anywhere locally. The negotiation you should make with a local co-host company is that you'll pay them a la carte for things. Like if you have to go send somebody to go buy a TV because you don't have a backup plan for that, they would go buy the TV, come bring it in, set it up, and they would charge you a good amount of money for that service, but it's flat rate. And that's the only thing you pay them for, is to save the day. Otherwise, if everything falls apart and you need to rely on a co-host company to run all the stuff like housekeeping and everything, because everything broke in your systems, then they would come and take over. And you have them agree that they're only taking over during windows of time, because you do intend on rehiring housekeepers and doing everything yourself. So you're going to pay them more percentage than normal because you want to have a no contract co-hosting agreement. Okay? So instead of them getting 20 to 25%, you might pay them 30% of revenue, for example. And then they agree to be your pitch hitter or pinch hitter. I don't watch baseball. Whatever it is, sorry guys, sorry baseball fans. These are the redundancies that you need. Now understand also that your housekeeper is going to be more expensive than normal when you work remotely, because you won't be able to necessarily train and hire and walk through housekeeping with a new fresh cleaner and teach them short-term rentals. You're not going to be there to do that. You need to find a company that already knows how to do short-term rentals, and that'll cost you a little bit more money. And that's why we also want to do houses when you do it remote, because you have more cash to afford the inflated expenses of having to hire professionals out the gate instead of building your own. Another advantage to having a house here is instead of having everything off-site where you have to invoke a co-host company to save the day, you can take a storage closet or like one of the extra closets or the basement of the house and fill it with everything the place needs for replacements. You can have a spare TV. You can have all the shampoo, body wash that you need, extra plates and cups, coffee station stuff, everything that the house could ever need if something goes missing or breaks, within reason. You're not storing a whole extra bed, but you might have extra pillows and extra sheets and the tools needed to repair stuff. If something goes wrong, you can just, of course, use the TaskRabbit to find a handyman to come pull the TV out of storage and put that new TV on the wall and then to register it. And that'll be cheaper probably than hiring this co-host company to go buy a new TV for you. And then you can Amazon Prime replace this stuff within a timeline. You just have like a higher level of backup inventory than somebody who locally runs their stuff would have typically. So again, this costs more money, but a house having a storage closet works for you. And let's say it's late night, you find out that the housekeeper did not restock the shampoo, body wash, or put out towels. The guest is like upset about it. You could either use something like Favor, DoorDash, Instacart to send them new stuff, or you could decide you trust them and say, hey, I'm going to give you access to our storage closet. Please only pull these things. We do have a real-time inventory of what's in there, so we'll know if something else is missing, but I don't want to inconvenience you more than you already are, so I'm going to trust you with access to our storage unit. Please take what you need. You can skip the fact that there is nobody locally, right? And because here's the thing, when you're local, you'll show up at 9 p.m. and solve it. A housekeeper may not, and you may not want to pay that co-host company for the trip fee that you would do a la carte. It could cost you $75 for them to send somebody to save the day just to access that closet, right? So if you are trying to save money, you could take the dice roll and trust your guest. So then let's get to the point of trusting your guest, because parties happen and illicit stuff can happen at properties and you want to prevent that. I recommend that you call all of your guests before they arrive. And this serves you multiple purposes. There's tons of reasons to call your guests. First off, when you call that phone number on the Airbnb account, it might go, the Google Voice subscriber you're trying to reach cannot be reached or whatever. That's a fake phone number, and you should call Airbnb and say, hey, this guest doesn't have a real phone number attached to their account. There's something illicit going on. If this guest does not put a real live phone number on their account, we cannot host them per our house rules and your policies. This will prevent you from having a bad guest. Getting them on the phone also allows you to build a connection with them, because since you're remote, it's a lot harder for you to have that intimate, like, I'm your host, I'm here to help kind of thing. But a phone call really does the trick. And so you say, hey John, my name's Sean, I'm your host here in Winter Park, Colorado for your stay coming up in a few days. I wanted to make myself available for a few minutes to answer any questions and see if there's anything else that I can do to make your stay a 5-star stay. And also I'd like to go over a couple of house rules just to make sure you read those. So John, do you have any questions, anything I can help you with? Anything that you need for your stay? They might ask you to leave extra towels out, or they might say, my wife has allergies or asthma or something. Can you please make sure that you don't wash the stuff with X, Y, or Z before arrival, or that you don't use these types of cleaners before our arrival, stuff like that. And you'll say, absolutely, John, I'll take care of that for you. Anything else? Satisfy them and say, okay, house rules this, house rules that, anything, like no parties, quiet hours are 10 p.m. If you have any other questions, here's a local contact for emergencies, and then here's my phone number for everything else. Something like that. And then after their stay is over, you call them again and tell them that they were a wonderful guest. You super enjoyed having them. You gave them a 5-star review, and that's a big thing for Airbnb's performance, ranking listings. So it would mean the world if they did the same for you, and try to win that 5-star stay. Now, since you're also remote, I would recommend going above and beyond a little bit more. Leave them snacks, leave them wine, different things like that to really make them feel like you accommodated them. And houses, again, can afford this extra expense, where studio apartments, they are much more lean, and you can't really necessarily afford going nuts on spending money on your guest. Let's say you could not discern that this guest was going to throw a party because they were a smooth operator on the phone. You should have a system called Minut, MINUT.com, Minut. They do noise detection, they do crowd detection, intrusion alarms, humidity, temperature, all sorts of stuff. So if somebody's cranking the AC, they leave a window or door open, all these things can be found out through this one device. You get 20% off if you use the code SEAN20, by the way. If you buy them in bulk though, I think you get the same discount. You don't need the promo code, but if you buy 2 or more and you buy them in packs of 2, I think you get 20% off out the gate. So if you forget the promo code, just buy 2. I don't own that company, by the way. I just love them. That Minut system, when you're local, this is a thing, when you're local, it's a lot easier for you to send a security officer or to send somebody to go squash the party. And this is something that you need to plan for being remote. When the intrusion alarm happens, we say, hey, your noise level is too high considering it's quiet hours right now. Please, can you please tone it down? After 15 minutes or 10 minutes, you'll say, the noise hasn't subsided. We will be sending a security officer if you do not lower the volume within the next 5 minutes. And when the security officer arrives, they will cancel your reservation on site. Warning, after 15 minutes of them not turning the noise down, you say, you are in violation of our house rules and Airbnb's community policies. We are sending a security officer to escort you off the property. You try to call them, and you do this all through the Airbnb app. Even if you get them on the phone and you talk to them, and you say, you need to quiet down right now, you still do everything through the Airbnb app because you need that documentation. By the 30-minute mark, a security officer should be at your door to stop the party. You need to squash parties fast before they ramp up. And the Minut system, it lets you know that noise is starting to get out of control. Really helpful. And then, of course, we get to a party within 30 minutes to stop the thing. When you're remote, you need to plan to have somebody on site that can do that. And that's a little sticky. I would usually recommend that you host remotely in a place that you also have friends and family. So this is easier to pull off. But again, that co-host company, when you interview your co-host company as your backup plan, be like, hey, could I pay you a la carte to prevent a party, right? Do you have somebody that you can send to the property if our noise levels get too crazy and I have to call you off the bench? Is that something that you guys can do? And I would find a co-host company that has those systems in place locally. You need local boots on the ground. You just need it. In recap, you need contingencies for late checkout, for damage, for theft, for housekeeper not showing up. You need to document things through something like GroupMe. You need party security stuff. You need a contingency for if a party is getting thrown. You need to be screening your guests more, doing it by phone call. You need to try harder for your 5-star reviews because you're not local. And you need to spy on your competition way more to find out what's cool to do locally and where and why people are going. These are all the things that you need to really sit down and do. So as you can tell, this requires just a lot more planning than normal. And the last thing is picking up the properties. Picking up properties remotely for arbitrage is a little more work, and I'll put it this way. Locally right now, I can just go drive around and look for yard signs that say for rent. Super easy. Those are probably the easiest people to pitch, by the way. Somebody who uses a yard sign in front of their house, they're more old school. They use websites less, they get less options for tenants because they're just relying on yard signs, for example, which means when you pitch them your Airbnb business, they're far less likely to have heard about it already, and two, they're probably going to be easier to pitch because they've had worse tenant experiences in the regular tenant world. By the way, the eviction moratorium's been lifted, so there's going to be a lot of property coming back on the market because people haven't paid a year of rent. So welcome to the jungle that is post. Now, if you're doing this remotely, you're going to need to be doing a lot of phone calls and be planning some stuff. I still recommend you do it like this. I recommend you stack 3 days worth of walkthroughs and you fly there and spend 3 days talking to landlords and apartment complexes. That's what I think you should do. If you can't fly there because you're tight on a budget, then you probably don't have enough money to start your Airbnb business because you should be picking up a house anyway, right? So if you're short on cash to even get a plane ticket or to road trip there and come back, then you probably should still do it locally. If you're strapped on time, but you have all the money in the world, Bruce Wayne, then you could find an apartment locator / real estate agent. I would do neighborhood real estate agents that know all about their neighborhood and try to find local real estate brokerages and kind of pitch them your business model. Tell them, hi, my name's Bruce Wayne. I got deep pockets. I'm looking to pick up 10 houses in the neighborhood and I'm willing to pay, right? Then you can break through and pick up properties remotely without you ever having to be there. Otherwise, I do think that you should spend a weekend flying there, pitching people, and then come back and then do the rest of your negotiations remotely over the phone and stuff like that. But just try to build some relationships over a couple of days doing all these walkthroughs. When you get to the staging part, you will be doing the staging largely remotely again. So you're going to have to hire an interior designer. There's no way that you can do this remotely because somebody has to take lead on getting all the stuff, showing up and staging the place. And if this is your first Airbnb property, it's really hard to hire people to stage a la carte. We have staging teams, right? And we try to buy down our costs by coming up with our own design ideas. I did a previous video about 4 design ideas you should know about. You can know what kind of design you want and communicate that to a designer, and then they go and get the job done. So if you're doing this absolutely remotely, then that is the best case because you don't need to know jack about what it is that they're doing. You just know that they're insured and you can trust them to furnish the place all the way. You should still show up on the final day of staging and make sure everything's in place, that the TV's signed into all the appropriate accounts, that they didn't forget to put decaf and tea in the coffee station, that they didn't slack on those little human touches that you need for a 5-star review. Those are the things that you should still show up and do later. So remotely is not 100% remote if you do it right. You're still showing up to negotiate, you're still showing up to do a final check all the boxes on your designer. Professional will come and do all the photos for you. They'll use something like WeTransfer or Dropbox or Google Drive, give you the photos, you create the listing, that can all get done remotely. But you still need to set up either keyless access or offsite lockbox. You should also have a redundancy for the lockbox, right, or the keyless access. Let's say your front door has a Schlage lock or an August lock or Yale or something like that. You need to plan for the battery to die or for it to break, and a guest can't get in. And it's 11 p.m. and they're like, we can't get in. That will happen. That's one of the things that goes wrong. You need to have a master lock somewhere in a discrete part of the house around the property and say, hey, okay, 20 feet to the right by the oak tree, there's gonna be a red birdhouse, and just past the red birdhouse that's on the wall, you're gonna find the master lock, there's gonna be a hard key in there. Sorry about the code not working. Right? That is like your backup plan for your technology failing. And remotely, you need a backup plan for your technology failing because again, you're not going to get a housekeeper to show up at 11 p.m. to come save the day, and you don't want to pay $150 or $100 for the co-host company to come save the day just to get the hard key, right? So these are the things you need to think about. So if you can play the chess game in your mind, you can play every move in your mind, then you will absolutely succeed remotely. If you can't, you should do a whole lot of work on the front end, and you should shadow a co-host. You should shadow a host locally in your hometown. Join my host group, the hosts of Airbnb Automated, because you can ask them, what is everything that could possibly ever go wrong on a property, right? And all the hosts will jump up and tell you all their horror stories. If you still want to be an Airbnb host after that question, you know that this is for you. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the other side.